and welcome. This is the first drafting tutorial for our summer draft and sew along, and it's for this vintage inspired gathered blouse. Amazingly, it is zero waste. It's made out of only rectangles and you can lay them out really efficiently on your fabric, and you can draft this the same with only 4 measurements and it will fit you exactly. I'm going to show you first of all how to measure yourself and then also how to draft with lots of little tips along the way on how to make sure it works for your taste, for your proportions, so it's exactly the blouse you want. We get started in a second, but I just want to let you know that there's lots of different ways you can learn with me. Have a look in the description to find out how, and we'll draft your dream wardrobe together. Let's get started with this top. The first thing you need to do to draft this top is to take your measurements, and we need 4 measurements to make it work. The first thing, and that's really the most important thing because all the proportions come from it, is your neckline width. So that's of course sort of related to where your straps sit as well, but basically with your neckline width, think roughly how wide you want it to be. So for me, for example, I'm going to sort of take a line. This is like a round part of my shoulder, so it's slightly in from where a basic bodice style would sit. I would go slightly towards my neckline. So you think, sleeveless style like that, that is perfect. That's the sort of thing you want. But you can still see all the roundness of your shoulder. You're sort of in that dip of your shoulder. And if I measure across straight, this is sort of exactly the measurement I want. Sort of where basically where your arm meets your shoulder, so where your arm would be. So that's the measurement across you want for your neckline. Of course, that's also related to how deep your neckline is. So what you can do is get 2 measuring tapes or a string, whatever works best for you. So I now know this is the sort of width I want, and of course that, sorry, you're always on, I'm mirroring myself. This is the width I want, but of course that changes slightly on how high I want it to. It's roughly the same, but once we've decided on the strap width, we will double check this still works. The strap width, which is also the depth of your collar, you really want it to be between your collarbone. You can have it as high as your collarbone. There's no maximum as close to the neckline you can go. However, what I would consider is the further down you go, the more curvy you're going to get. So if you want to sit this flat, if you go too low, it's going to interfere with the curves of your bust. So you can see you want it in that flat section of your chest. So for a lot of us, a good measuring of that is about 5 centimeters below our collarbone. So if I measure down about 5 centimeters of my collarbone, which is where I roughly want it. So that measurement, if you go across, and then you can go up to your shoulder, and that is your neckline or strap length. So where the top of your shoulder is, so if you're wearing a top or a t-shirt underneath, go for your shoulder seam. Otherwise, just double check it's straight and at the top of your shoulder, and make a note of that measurement. And it's going to be the same on the front as the back. It's identical, which is why you don't want too deep. So that is the first measurement, which is your neckline depth, and then the second measurement is your neckline width, which, as I said, is roughly across your chest at the level of your strap. And of course, if you have it 0.5 centimeter out or in, you can easily fix it later. That's a really nice thing as well with this trowel. you can easily fix things on the toile. So when you make it, you can easily chop a half a centimeter off, and it'd be really easy to make quick alterations. But for now, if you measure roughly from where your arm meets to your arm and make a note of it, and that is your neckline width, and then we have the length. That's your two measurements, which are really important ones, because they will determine how everything comes together. The third measurement is just the width of the top from your neckline down. So the bottom of your neckline panel. So if you roughly remember, or if you still have your tape around it, you're more organized than me. But from that point, you just measure down how long you want it to be. So that could be upper hip length, so you can tuck it into your high-waisted trousers. You could, of course, make a really simple summer throw-on dress, you know, like a sort of house dress like this as well. That all works. But make a note of that length. And then the final measurement we need, and when we're done, is the sleeve length. So you can see this is not a very long sleeve, and I would keep it quite short. The longer you will make it, the more sort of interference you might get, because of course this is a complete square, like a geometric shape. So it's a complete rectangle with a square gusset. So if you make it too long, the gusset has to stay shorter. So I would make the first version as this, which is a short sleeve, sort of maximum down halfway your upper arm. So what you need to do is measure. So if you remember your neck panel width, which is like this, and if you go up there, just straight, don't go in or out, and from that point down, if you measure, actually I'm going to do my right hand side because I'm left-handed. So that point roughly, all you need to do is measure down your armhole. And again, if it's a little bit out on the toile, it's easily to fix. But roughly work out how high you want it. And of course, what you can also consider is, because it has like a little puff effect, you might want to push it up. So I want a little bit of a sort of curve. So I'm going to make it this long. And these are all measurements you need. Strap height, then how far you want your straps apart, so your neckline width, bodice width, and bodice length, and sleeve length. So 4 measurements, that's all we need. We can now go on the paper and quickly draft it out, and it's really easy to draft because we're only drafting rectangles and squares. I've got quite a big piece of paper, but if in doubt, you only actually need a medium-sized piece of paper and a really small piece of paper, and that should be fine. So first of all, I'm going to draft my necklines, which is 2 pieces. So I'm just trying to work out exactly what you can see. So first of all, let's draw our neckline panels. I'm quickly gonna draw this on, how it looks like, so I can show you what I'm drafting each time. So this is our top. Like this. So the pieces we're drafting are our sort of neckline panel, 1 strap panel, which you're then going to copy across. The neckline we're going to copy across to the back, so we're only going to cut it out in fabric twice. We didn't need to cut it out in paper twice. We're going to cut out the front bodice, which is the same on the back again, and 1 sleeve and 1 gusset. So it is 5 pattern pieces, but they're really straightforward. So the first one I'm going to do is this neckline piece, which is a rectangle. So we're going to draw it across. So you should have your neckline width measurement, and that is of course the outer edge. Yeah, so that is important. So I'm going to mark that on. And the original one has, of course, got embroidery. If you want to do that, you can make the panels a little bit narrower to allow for that really loose embroidery stitches, which is holding everything together. But for its most basic ones, you don't need that. On this panel, I'm going to mark the half, because that is my center front and also my center back. Next, I need to draw in the height. That is completely up to you. The original top is 5 centimeters. So the height of this is 5 centimeters, which is 2 inches, more or less exactly. So I would go for that. I think that's quite a flattering round number. For some reason, 1 inch, 2 inches. I think they're in our evolutionary memory, they work really well. It's a really clean measurement. So I'm going to just use the parallel lines on my ruler, but of course what you can also do is measure 5 centimeters at either end and double check it's correct by having a third measurement in the middle. And then you connect all 3, and you can sort of double check that everything should be perfectly right angles. So this is my neckline panel. The straight of grain is parallel to the center front and center back. We will cut 1 pair, or actually 2, it doesn't really matter, in the self, and then we're also going to cut another pair or 2 in the facing. And of course you can use the same for inner and outer. And as an optional option, if you're using something really thin, you can also add 1 interface, like an interfacing ×2. That's optional. Next thing we need to do is add our seam allowance, like this. Again, as I'm drawing it, and this is always slightly more tricky if you're on camera and you're I don't want to put my head in front of the camera, double check this is all right angles, because this pattern is so geometric. If it's wonky, it will stand out. And if in doubt, you know, if you wanted to, I'm drawing on paper, you could literally, on your piece of fabric, with your measurements, you can just pull the thread so you get perfect straight of grain, and then literally just parallel pull your thread at the panel height plus the seam allowance, and you will get the perfect panel, which is even faster. The second thing I'm going to do is our strap. So pattern piece number 1 is done. The strap is exactly the same as the neckline panel. You can see it's the same width as this is high. So again, it's really pleasing to the eye, but it's identical. So we draw another rectangle. I'm actually going to cheat, which I love, or take a shortcut. So I know I need 1 centimeter seam allowance, so I'm going to cut across there later. So to save myself time, I'm actually going to draw the seam allowance for my second panel on. So this line now, I've drawn a blue, should really be black, is now my next pattern piece. So that way when I'm cutting out, because I want to cut really perfect straight lines, I only have to cut 1. So this is going to be my strap. So earlier we measured half our strap, of course, because from the front to the shoulder. So you need to double that measurement now. That's the length of your pattern piece. So on this new line, I'm going to draw double the measurement I took earlier. And as I said, because it's sometimes a little bit tricky to work that out on yourself, you could see I got slightly confused by left and right. If it's slightly out, make it a little bit longer if you're in doubt. And then on the trowel, you can just quickly chop it off. It's just one seam you have to change. So I've marked it. So now I can just again draw at right angle up like this. I'm going to mark the center again. And that of course is my shoulder. And then the height is exactly the same. So again, I'm this time going to draw across, but you can also measure it. We haven't got parallel ruler. And then we add our seam allowance again, taking great time. So you can see I'm just being really efficient with my paper and how I lay it all out. So it's visually a little bit confusing, hopefully not too much. But the reason I wanted to show it to you is because that will save you a little bit of time later on, which is always nice. So this is my shoulder piece. On there, you can do a straight of grain this way or that way. I would keep it the same as I did on here. If you have, of course, a patterned fabric or stripy fabric, check fabric, then you might have to play around with how you want it all. But if you're embroidering it, for example, you want the straight of grain to be exactly the same on each piece, so it stays stable. So this is my strap. And then you're gonna again cut one pair or two in yourself. You're gonna cut one pair in facing, and then you have the interfacing if needed. The original isn't interfaced, which makes it really light and easy, but it depends what fabric you use. I'm now going to cut it out. Let's do our bodice, which is super easy. It's another rectangle. Surprise, surprise. What you do now is this piece. First thing I need to do is just draw in my center front and center back line, which is going to be a fold because we don't want to waste paper. Center front, center back, it's a fold. Okay, piece is a complete rectangle, so I'm going to draw the hem in, and I'm using my narrow ruler. Of course, if you're drawing two lines, like big lines, long lines at a right angle, your pattern master is a little bit safer because it's got a longer 90-degree line, so you're not you can see that you're completely 90-degree all the way across. So what I'm going to first do is mark the height of my bodice piece, which is of course up to you on how long you want it. So mine is quite long, which means you can't quite see it. I'm actually going to work at the top. So again, I've marked the length. Again, I need to draw in a perfect 90-degree angle. And that's literally, I do use my pattern master for that. Because on this you only got 5 centimeters to check it's correct. On here you've got, what, 20? And then I can just continue drawing my line. So I've drawn in my height. For the width of my piece, the original is double. And that gives you can see a really nice amount of gathers. So if in doubt, and if you're small to medium busted, just go with that. So take the measurement from the width you took earlier and double that. And that is your full front and full back measurement. However, if you're fuller busted, what you can do, because if you have lots of gathers there and you're very curvy, some people don't like it because it makes you look, it accentuates the wrong area of your shape. As I said, completely up to taste that, but the minimum you really want to do is about your bust measurement plus around 10 centimeters, which is 4 inches for the front and the back. So for the whole whole circumference of your bodice top, you want your bust measurement plus, I think, about 20 centimeters extra all the way around, which is about 8 inches. You can of course start with that, and then you can pick again, just cut off the edge a little bit if it's too much. So if in doubt, I would always start with more, and then on the trowel just make it slightly less if it's too overwhelming. I'm going to do the front and back identical. Of course, you could do it slightly different. You could make the back slightly less if you wanted to. But I think the nice thing about this top is the simplicity. So I would start with the really basic stuff, and then on the trowel, if it doesn't work with your proportions, amend it then. So I'm going to do with a double. So on my full front, it's double measurement. So of course, I'm only drawing half my bodice. So all I need to do is draw my neckline panel width. So again, I'm saving time. So this is basically the width of my, roughly anyway, yes, should be exactly. This is the width of my neckline panel, but because this is on fold, it will be double the width when we cut it on fabric. So again, we're just saving paper, time, because if you draw out a really big pattern piece, it's quite cumbersome, as you can see even here. You can't actually see the whole pattern piece. So now I'm going to copy the same measurement at the bottom quickly, and then draw one line connecting it all. And this is where it's always a test to see whether your pattern piece is perfect, because if any of your angles are 90 degrees, you will end up with a wonky line. So thankfully mine there. Now I need to add seam allowance for my side seam, for my top, and for the original the hem is a pin hem, so it has just 1 centimeter seam allowances. Again like this. There we go, and just join it up again to my center front. That is my pattern piece. You can see it's a big rectangle, but it's actually very straightforward. My straight of grain again is parallel to here. We're going to cut 2 in self, and one of course is the back and one is the front. So back and front. This is going to get gathered to the neck panel. Okay, that's my bodice piece done. I'm going to cut it out later because I don't think you need to have me silently cutting for a few minutes. The next thing we need to do is the sleeve. So we've done number 3. Now we're going to do number 4. What the sleeve is, if I show you quickly on the original, the sleeve height, so in a way our armhole measurement, is the height of our neckline plus the strap plus the height of the neckline at the back. So to draft the sleeve again is identical at the front and the back. So to draft our pattern piece, we're going to draft half, which means we need the measurement of our height of our neckline plus half of our strap, which is of course the original measurement. So we're going to draw a line with those measurements. So I could cheat again and start on that line if I wanted to. So I'm going to start with 2 lines again, meeting at 90 degrees. As perfect as I can be. Okay, so first of all I need to measure my neckline panel height, so I've marked that. And then of course half my strap. So I can take that measurement and transfer it across. There you go. Again at that point, that is the height. Of course now I need to add my gathers. So the original one, again, has double the amount of gathers. So the sleeve is basically double the height of measurement we've just done. So again, I would go with that and try it out. Of course, if you want a slightly less gathered sleeve, you could go with half of that if you wanted to. I wouldn't go too little gathers because this is a complete square. So we don't want to compromise on fit and design too much. If you have not enough gathers, I think that sleeve won't work or look really, really odd because you need the gathers to basically shape around the round body. So I'm going to double that. So I got my measurement here. I'm going to measure the complete measurement again and then transfer it up here. And that, of course, is only half because that's my front part. So what I'm going to do to save on paper is make that my shoulder fold line. And then this, of course, is my neck. That was bad writing, I apologize. And then this, of course, connects to our gusset. Last thing we have to do is draw in the length of our sleeve. As I said, that's up to you. Originally was 20 centimeters, so I'm going to use that. Okay. The moment of truth. Have I got right angles? Fingers crossed. Yay! And there's our cuff. Of course, this top also has a drawstring, which is 2 centimeters in, and you can use elastic or do a little channel. That's sort of up to you. You could add a little, you could have a seam there for a channel, or to stitch it on the inside. They all work, but that is for the drawstring. Okay, that's our sleeve. Which is pattern piece number 4. And again, our straight of grain is just parallel, actually, to our shoulder fold one, because where we want to fold it on the straight of grain. If you're using a very stable cotton, I would actually go with, you know, being really efficient and making the 0 waste. So you could switch at 90 degrees on a really stable plain cotton, of course. And then this line gets gathered into the strap and neck. Okay, last thing we need to do is add seam allowances on 3 sides. Again, this has got really basic pin hem on the cuff. Of course, what you could do is that you actually have a longer upturn, which then becomes a drawstring at the same time, so you could extend your piece there. I'll probably go through different options you have in the tutorial on fabrics and constructions. I'm going to talk about sort of different finishing methods, depending on what fabric you want to use and stuff. So do let me know what fabric you're planning to make this, whether it's plain or striped. whether you want to use embroidery or special effects or whatever you want to do, and I will make sure to answer that in that tutorial. You can just, put it in the comments. So that's our sleeve panel. Now we need to do the last one, which is our gusset, which if I show you on the top again, it's very simple. It's the length of our sleeve, and of course it's a complete square. So for our last pattern piece, all we need to do is draw a square, which is why I call this a zero waste pattern, because I think it'd be interesting if you laid it out, which I haven't done, whether you would end up literally using the fabric as it is. So I'm going to actually draw this parallel to my edge here, so I have to do less cutting, because cutting out is one of my least favorite things. So I'm going to measure my sleeve length, and then using my pattern master to be precise, draw a perfect, fingers crossed, square. Like this. Again, moment of truth. There's nothing worse than, this is very straightforward patterns, but if you do more complex patterns, you get all your line and the last line doesn't match, and you have to check every single one. So which is why I repeat it. It might seem silly, but it is important. Okay, so this is my gusset, and I forgot the sleeve you cut out two, and of course they unfold, which also I need to put on the bodice. And the gusset you just cut out ×2 in self, and the straight of grain can be any of the basically of the lines, like this. And that's your last pattern piece. The last thing we need to do is just make a little notch on our bodice piece, so we know where the gusset ends. So if I move it up again, later on I will cut them all out, but you can see that's my bodice piece. So what I'm going to do is on the side seam put a finer notch for my gusset. Now you know how to draft this top, and of course I would love you to join me and make your own. You can make it exactly the style, you can choose different fabrics and so on to adapt it to your own style. And the great thing of course about learning how to pattern cut your own clothes is that you can design exactly the clothes you want, and depending on the fabric you choose, with little variations and gathers I talked about, that will make this look really different. So think about see-through silk for a much more luxurious version, or plain bright linen, or maybe a striped shirting fabric for a more casual utility wear look. So there's lots of options how you can adapt this blouse to yourself. Join me for the next tutorial where I will show you to draft a different type of geometric made to measure tunic style, and then we'll also talk about fabrics and constructions later on. So make sure you don't miss these tutorials. Please like this and subscribe if you want to join in this summer draft along. Last thing, of course, I would love to see what you're making. Let me know in the comments, send me an email, or tag me. The best thing is to tag me on Instagram or send me a DM, and I will make sure to have a look, get excited with you, and then also if you want me to share it in our last session, I will make sure to do that too. But that's it from me for today. Thank you so much for watching.